Building Scout Trooper helmet. Let's continue from the point that we left off. We've got the main bulk of the assembly complete. We've got the back together, we've got the peak together, it's all attached to the front, and we've got a flipping up and down helmet. Really flipping good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to trim this helmet up to its final shape, and then we're going to address the problems we've got with the seam on the visor and down the main bulk of the helmet. I'm going to show you how we get rid of that problem. Let's go. So I'm going to pull this out. Right, now I usually start on this one. Don't know why, it's just my preferred method. There, she looks good there, doesn't she? So I'm going to trim this out. And what we're looking for here is just a return edge. It's not even particularly big. It's 3-4 mil maybe. And what it's doing is it's adding strength, because we've got that fold in the plastic. That return edge is going to add a lot of strength. So we've got some rough lines on the front here, but they were just rough to aid with the building until this point. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put kind of the finish marks on, and I'm just going to run my finger around it to get the kind of depth that I would like. So we don't need all this, we just need a few millimeters. This bit's going to be a fun bit, but don't worry about that, we'll get to that. Now you don't want this super thick, because you've got to get your head between these 2 points. It is going to flex, it's designed to do that, that's part of the putting on process, but you really don't need a whole heap of material there. And there are some parts on here where you may even be able to see the kind of the original trim line. So I'm just marking this to give me a little bit of a guide. So here we can see, certainly on this bit, you can really see where that original trim line was. So I would recommend following something like that. Okay, again up the side here, you don't want a whole lot of material, you don't need it. It's not serving any purpose. Let's trim it off there. And obviously make it look nice. Right, okay, yeah, everything's in that I want to be in. Right, so I'm going to trim this out. Now on the face, it's not, as we're looking at this, it's not a straight line, you know, we're not, from this point to this point is not a straight line. We've got a slight curve in the outside here. I don't know if you can see that, I don't know if the camera's kind of picking that up too well. There's a curve, just follow it on that side. So you end a nice flowing curve, yeah? So just here we've got a curve. And we're going to trim it like that. This will be more apparent when we come to trimming this one, where there's a curve where you may not expect there to be a curve, but there is a curve, and it looks nicer when you put the curve in, believe you me. Okay, I've got my Dremel here, and I've got my new sanding bob. So this is a new sanding bob that Dremel have just put out. I've tried it, I quite like it. It's supposed to last a hell of a lot longer. And you can also cut holes with it as well, which could be good when you're doing the eyes on here. You can punch your hole straight in without drilling it. Not tried it. It's new technology. Certainly to me. Comment below if this has been out for like months or years, and I've only just cottoned onto it. But anyway, here we go. I'm going to give this helmet a quick trim up, and then we'll do the faceplate. Here comes the noise. So here I'm going to turn that off. So here I'm going to get right into this corner and show you how that's going to work. So I need to get my sanding bit right into that corner that way and up into this way. Just taking that melted angry edge off with the deburrer. Just break all of that free. That's all the stuff we don't want. Okay, so now you should be able to see that we're cleaned up. We've got a nice thin edge. You get on there. You see that return edge. It doesn't need a lot, but it's giving it strength. That fold in the plastic is giving it a lot of strength. Yeah, you can probably just about see. And that's it, that's all we need all the way around. You can see there's not a huge amount on there. You can take a bit more off if you really want to. There are still imperfections in this, it's kind of got a point to it. We're going to get that when we fill it and sand it. That's basically trimmed out. Not a huge job. Let me get rid of some of this. Now you may have noticed when I was doing that, and while I've been messing with this whole helmet, I've been putting it straight on the bench and I'm not too concerned about it. That's because it's got a paint finish. So I'm not really bothered about the way it's handled on the bench. If this was a Stormtrooper helmet and this was the finish on the ABS, I would be using a piece of foam or something on the bench. But I'm not doing, because we're going to create a lot more surface damage on this when we sand it due to the filling of this seam. Right, okay. This one you may want to have a look at reference photographs, but this peak is slightly deeper than the sides. So we have got something drawn on. You can see a bit of something. I will say that on our original production helmet, which was production made, not screen used, this was all trimmed quite evenly, so this was quite shallow. You don't want that, you want it a little bit deeper. When we made the tools, we allowed for this so that we could get it how we wanted it, because we appreciated it was wrong. Okay, so we're going to trim this piece out. We've already trimmed the bottom out, so to allow this face to go in. And then the bottom of the face itself, this again has got a definite curve all the way around here. So you get that, you get a jawline. This is not straight. If I just hold something straight up to these 2 points, you see that curve? If I can handle it. Yeah, see the curve that's going on? And it does make all the difference. So there's a curve to this. It curves down and then round. On this there is a curve here. It's not a straight cut as you might expect, certainly if you're looking at the Black Series helmet where it's very angular. It's not like that. We want to put those curves in, and we're kind of going to sand, we're going to sand that shape in, if you like, but it's not quite there at the moment. Okay, let's trim again. Oh, before we do trim, there are areas like this and the front and the back on this piece where we've got an extra joining piece on the inside. You see it there? That makes this thicker, and the same on this front piece. So when you're sanding this curve in around here, watch out for that, because there's a lot more material to move, double the material on this point than there is next to it, and you can quite easily end up sanding too much away next to that, because you're sanding away at it thinking it's double, and then you move to the side of it and you know you're going to get a dip. So just be careful, back off a little bit when you're on this area. I've not even got it 100% finished yet, but we're going to fill it, and then we can always go at it again, even with just a bit of rolled up sandpaper, using Paul's favourite action. Okay, let's trim that face. So I've took most of the weight out. I've not actually fine-tuned this yet. I've just took the majority of that out of there. You can do it other ways. You can use the cutting head on the Dremel if you really wanted to. Or you can use other ways, a knife or shears or whatever. I usually don't do that. I will just take the weight out of it with the sanding bob and then come back to it. Now these lines that are on there, these were just the guides from when we were building the helmet. So what I want to do is, again, run my finger down so I've got that same distance. All the way across the visor. And you're going to want to check that, make sure you're happy with that it's looking straight. It's not yet because I've not trimmed it, but I'm going to trim it out now. So I've got a line. That's a better edge. I'm happy with that. If you can see that there, yeah. Okay, so we're going to go a little thinner on the sides, up to a nice point here, and then a little thinner on this side, and then keep this a little bit fatter. And again, it's not perfectly straight. It has got a little rise to it. Okay, so although this looks like a very angular helmet, it has got some curves. You can see that there, can't you? There are curves all around the helmet, and we're going to follow those. Looks angular, it's very curvy. Use the best angle to get it out. Okay, I'm going to get in on these corners here. I'm going to get on the corners here with some sandpaper because I don't want to risk putting the Dremel with all those RPMs too close to the face. It's not going to gain me anything. Okay, let's trim out that bottom and put that nice curve in just here. The all important curve in there. Now, there is a little bit too much weight on there. I don't want all of that, so I'm gonna trim a little off first. So as you can see, there's we want to be just about here. Can't really draw it on. There's not the angle to do it, but I've got all of this extra that I don't need, so I'm just going to trim that off first. So I don't want to go straight up to this line, because almost think of it as that's the edge and then this part here is the return. So you can see how I've drawn it on. That's what I want. I want to keep a little bit of that. Okay, so this is where this is our starting point, and now I'm going to use the Dremel. Can you get that? I need to secure it against my body. Right, so hopefully you can see, if I hold it up here against me, you should be able to see that curve that I'm talking about. There you go, you can see that kind of return edge that's on the bottom. It's not strictly speaking a return edge in the usual sense, because it doesn't necessarily go underneath, you know, it's at an angle, but it is return edge. It's doing the same with this helmet, giving it more strength because of that fold in the plastic. And then from underneath, look at the symmetry on that. Yes, that's sarcasm. It's not symmetrical. It's a Star Wars helmet. It was hand built. That's the sort of thing that you're not going to notice, but your eye is subliminally going to see it, and it's going to look correct. That's what it's like. Don't look as asymmetrical when you hold it like that. Okay, and that is basically the trimming done. There are a couple of little areas like down here where I would go at it with sandpaper, maybe just on these corners. But other than that, that is the bulk of our trimming done. And I think that's as much trimming as I would be concerned about doing at this stage. Now, we need to look at the seam and remove that, so that we have got two complete pieces. Right, so what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to throw a little bit of this plastic weld down the seam and around all the little pieces on the inside. If you don't use plastic weld, you've not got any accessible, it's not super important. You can just go straight at this with the filler that we're going to use, which is going to bond it together anyway. But it's just belt and braces. It doesn't take long. I have it on hand. Just makes the job the best that I think I can do. So I'm literally just going to paint that weld in there. Let it find its way into all the seams. So this stuff, if you've not used it before, it's got the consistency of water. It's a solvent, and it's just going to melt the plastic and fuse all the touching plastic components together. It's a well-used adhesive in model making and in a lot of the other Star Wars helmets. There, you don't have to make this look pretty. Stick it on fairly liberally. Okay, I'm just going to go around the inside. If you remember all of our little tabs that are holding it together on the inside, you can make yours look even prettier if you really want to spend the time on it. There's absolutely no need though. So we super glued these in, but this is going to get in any nooks and crannies it can find and just hold it all together. So when I'm applying this, I'm just going up to the edge of the piece. It's going to find its way in there. Daub it all on there. It is possible to skip this stage, but I like it. It just bonds it all together. Before you move on, you know you've done the best you can for it. Big piece of part that was deburred. Right, okay, so what I've noticed here as I've been doing this is there's not a little tab piece in the back. If you can see there, we've got the joining tab in the front here. We've got a piece in the front here, but there's not one in the back here. And that means there's nothing supporting these two pieces other than the face. So over time, there is potential for a crack to appear there. We don't want that, so I'm just going to stick another little tab in there. Literally just a little bit of ABS. Oh, that's lovely. I almost guessed that completely spot on. Right, so what I'll do is, as soon as I've got the plastic weld out, just clamp that in place, and I'll just paint a little bit of the plastic weld on it. Oh, look at that. I've decided to be really kind on this one and stick a little bit there. I'm not going any further. You don't want to go into the corners. We're not gluing that. You can see there actually the gaps, can't you? Just in the edges in this corner section here. I'm not putting any glue there at all. These are loose. I don't know if you can see that flexing. You see that movement? I can make it move. There you go. You see that, can't you? I move my fat fingers. Okay, we're leaving that. Okay, that plastic weld's pretty much gone off now. Quick acting stuff. You don't want this to pool up because it can start eating the plastic, melting too much, so don't allow it to pool up. So I wouldn't have it sat that way. He says with this one down, I didn't put that much in. That was a different area. A little bit on the outside there. Okay. Put my top back on the plastic weld because this is a solvent and it does evaporate. Right, while that one's going off, what I'm quickly going to do is just run over this with my palm sander and just try and get two sides a little bit more even, and then we'll fill the gap. So I've got palm sander here with, this is 100 grit. I don't like to go crazy on it because this is going to have a paint finish. The more you rough it up, the more you're going to need to sand with the lower grades to get rid of all those marks before you come to paint. You don't want all the scratches underneath your paint. You don't want that. Okay, one tip I will give you, when you're sanding the top, as you've got your sander on there, you're putting weight on and it's gonna bow down because this has got flex on it. You can see that, can't you? And that would be the case if you're not using a palm sander. If you're just using the sandpaper and a block, as you're pushing on it, you can see that flexing there. So I like to just hold it, give it some opposite flex, just cradle it, push it together a little bit, and it's just going to make this a little bit tighter. Okay, that's about as much sanding as I want to do at this stage. We've just got any really big high spots out of the way, and that's going to give us a nice base to put the filler that we're going to use on the helmet. And I don't want to start changing the shape. I just literally want to get rid of the seam. Okay, now the same is going to apply on this piece. Obviously it's a lot smaller and a lot easier. Don't know, just before I started sanding, I don't know if you recall, where this joined, there was a slight raised area on one side. That's gone now. But don't worry about the plastic and thinking, oh, it's thin plastic. In all of this area, we have got more plastic behind it. So you've got all your jointing strip basically doubling up the thickness of the plastic in this area. I'll continue. Okay, again, that's as much as I need to do at this point. As you're looking at this, if your peak or the visor here looks like it's bellowing out a little bit at the front, there, can you see that? Can you see how it's got, that's the front edge and you can still see it from this angle, but you can't here. That's correct, that's what it should be doing. Again, that's one of the curves in the helmet. It's not all right angles, so don't worry about that. In fact, I'd worry if you've not got that, because you're going to have a problem somewhere down the road. Okay. Right, I'm going to put some filler on this. It's a dusty job. You may want to wear a mask, especially if you've not got a whole lot of ventilation in your area. This is quite a big area, so I'm not overly concerned. It's just a very small amount of dust for me. Okay, so what I'm going to use is a car body filler, our good old friend Bondo. This is the brand today. Tomorrow we might be using a different one. We're not hard and fast on it. Easy sand. Yeah, I like it. Okay, spread it on what you would usually spread your body filler on. Smaller tins are available. I'm going to use an old silicone mold here just so I can peel it off afterwards, and any residue throw it in the bin and I'm nice and clean, ready to go again. But cardboard, piece of waste plastic, old cereal packet, whatever you've got that's a nice flat clean surface. Oh, that was difficult to get into, wasn't it? Again, if you don't like the smell of this, you may want to use a mask. Probably advisable. I'm not going to mix a massive amount of this up because I'd rather mix a little bit more if I've not got enough than mix too much and it go off and I just end up with it all over the place. Does this need puncturing? Nope, it's good to go. Here we go. So they usually recommend P to a golf ball. You just have to imagine what a P next to a golf ball would look like, I guess. But you don't need a whole lot of this hardener in there. If you didn't want to use body filler, you could use scrap ABS melted down and give it a good few hours to make kind of a mush paste. I think previously I've shown building them with that. Both methods work really well. If you've got a good quality body filler, you're going to be fine. Okay, so I've not mixed a whole shed load of this, and that's because I don't like to put a load of body filler on. Everything you put on that's extra, you need to sand off. So you don't want to put a ton of it on and then spend a lot of time sanding it off. It makes no sense. What I would recommend is put a thin coat on, give it a sand. You're probably going to need a little bit more. Just go with another coat. You don't need to, don't try and get it all in one go, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because you're just going to end up with a load of body filler that's gone off that you didn't have time to work with, and a lot more sanding than you really need. I'm using a palm sander. You don't need to. You can block and paper it. It all works absolutely fine. In fact, we did that for many years. Just getting old and lazy now, I guess. And again, I'm trying to get rid of the seam here. I want to stress that I'm not trying to build up shapes that aren't there to get the two pieces to go together. Hopefully you've done that in your build stage. Body filler is fine to use on this. We see this on production made Y-wings, especially where the two halves don't meet up that fantastically, and body filler was their friend. They did actually sculpt some of the shaping on that using body filler in the recess around the back. if you've got any slight gaps in the plastic tabs that you use to join the two halves, and the body filler kind of goes inside, looks a bit like when you're emptying the toothpaste, that's fine, just let it go off. You don't even need to do anything with it. I am kind of coming at the other side of this, you know, the gap here, so there's a little bit on the inside. It's all just going to give it a little bit more strength. Now, you're going to need something to put that on, because you don't want that back edge touching. Okay, we're not gone yet, but we're going. That's a good sign. If you're doing this somewhere in hotter climes, although I don't know where, because Manchester is blistering right now. That's sarcasm. Your body filler is going to go off a lot quicker. Okay, I'm relatively happy with that. That's gone rather nicely. Just going to wipe the excess off my spreader. They're really cheap, they only give you one spreader. We were lucky we had a spreader. Usually I cut down a piece of waste plastic. Right, filled. That is the helmet filled. From here, it's just a case of sanding, whether you use palm sander or a block and paper, and you get in there and just sand it. The choice is yours. But literally now, that is a case of sanding flat. You may see a couple of imperfections. Hopefully they will only be in small areas. Go it again with a filler, reapply, sand again. You may need to do it a third time, you may need to do it a fourth time, you may need to do it more times depending on how good your build was. But the filler is the key at this point. And once you have sanded away, you should have something that resembles, here's my blue Peter section, should have something that resembles this. Now I didn't build this one, and earlier on when I was talking about the scratches you get in the plastic, there you can see they've all been filled with this, with the top coat of the fine filler. But I would say save yourself a lot of time, you don't need to do that. So this is what it looks like when it's all sanded flush. Exactly what you would expect. And then with primer applied, it's dusty, it still needs flattening off. The primer's not been rubbed down, but that's what you're going to end up with. Very dusty. So this needs flattening off. Flattening off is just where the well, that needs a bit of a final sand as well, just in there. But flattening off is just taking the roughness out of the primer. This is a high build primer that's been sprayed on it. Just a fine sandpaper, take all that off, and we're going to be ready for paint. Just so you can see the inside, so you can see that it is a joined helmet. Move that out of the away. There again, you can see that curve. Now it's in primer, you can see it even better, can't you? So that is building the helmet, trimming the helmet out, adding the filler, sanding it, and preparing it for paint. It's not difficult to do the fill. The build is the key part. When you get to the filling, it's just time, effort with your sanding and getting the finish that you want. If you're not happy with it, continue with it. But my advice would be use sparing amounts of filler. Don't try and build a shape up that's not there. Hold it tight while you're sanding so that you're not bellying this, because then you'll end up with something that resembles an arse crack, and you don't want that. And that's it. One last piece before we leave this section of the build that we've not done. The snout here, the vac forming process means things bend round corners to produce the shapes. The snout here needs to be sanded. That needs to be sanded flat. So I'll just show you exactly what I mean. Again, you can do this with block and paper or with the palm sander. So we're just sharpening up that to give it that nice flat front, just like one of my dogs. Flat nose. There it is. Just took a little bit of that round off. And that's it for the sanding. That's all you need to do. So what have we got left? We've got painting the helmet, and then we've got installing the decals, the chin strap, the snout, and the hard hat liner. And then we will have a finished helmet. I don't really know if I'm going to be able to show you the painting as in depth, but I mean, painting's painting. If you've sprayed something, you've sprayed something, and that's what we're going to use to paint this, obviously. Right, so that is our, let me just see how this is gone. Yeah, it's pretty much gone. So that is our build. That is the built helmet, trimmed and prepped with the body filler to remove the seam. Then we've got our sanded version. And then first primed version. So this journey has taken us from the kit, unbuilt, to built, to trimmed, to filled, to sanded, to primed and ready for paint.